Hey, what's going on? Fantasy Feud here, coming at you Monday evening. We're just catching up on the Monday Night Football game. We want to bring you guys a recap of all of the games that were on Sunday. Big shout out to my co-host Paul right here. How you doing, big dog?
Oh, not too bad. Will say I'm a little sad. I was down 40 points in like the one possible game I could win this week. Aaron Jones has me 37, and now he's sitting the rest of the game.
Hey, that's okay. You never know. We're still as we're airing or recording this right now. Aaron Jones is still playing, so never say never. Our main guy Stone is out on sabbatical right now, like Paul said just a little bit ago. Um, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and run this ourselves. So I'm gonna jump right in it, guys. Me and Paul are gonna talk about the Browns versus the Texans. Paul, when you think about that game, what comes to your mind?
I'm just slightly confused because you seen the Texans destroy Jacksonville last week. And then you almost expected to see a similar kind of situation with the Browns destroying them and going back to being the laughing stock. But I think at one point they were beating the Browns like almost halfway through the game. And then Baker Mayfield kind of came back after his injury, whatever that was. Nick Chubb took over the game. He got 2 rushing touchdowns. Baker ran one in, and he just kind of flipped the script and turned the game around at that point.
Yeah. My thought is the Texans are not who we thought they are. They're coming out a little stronger, playing hard. They're going to give teams a matchup each and every week, it looks like. The only startable person on that team is probably Brandon Cooks. Everything else is a crapshoot from there. Don't start any Browns tight ends. We had David Njoku do well week 1, and then we had Harrison Bryant and their other guy, Austin Hooper, come out and both put up a little bit of tight end relevancy for fantasy this week. Chubb and Hunt are the only relevant players right now, in my opinion, on the Browns. Yeah, that's a quick recap there. Let's go ahead and move on to the Bears versus the Bengals. Paul, I'm going to let you start with that.
Bud. So if you guys paid attention to our preview of the week, I know I kind of went on a little bit of a rant, hoping that the Bears lost, hoping that they got blown out so we can see Justin Fields come in. And it kind of happened, but at the same time, it wasn't necessarily because of a blowout. That secondary stepped up heavily. They shut down Jamar Chase to the tune of, I think, like 2 or 3 catches for 50-something yards and a touchdown.
2 for
Be
50.
it kind of on a and one of them, it was broken coverage. I guess not broken coverage, but him running in the slot with Kendall Vildor. It was either him or our other corner. Can't even think of his name right now.
That perfect
But he got beat.
about that touchdown. Are you talking about that
Yeah,
touchdown? That was a
yeah.
nice ball, my bro.
It was. But again, it was because of the lack of having a true nickel corner, slot corner on our team. Like I said, it's Kendall Vildor and forget who the other guy who's been in playing, Duke Shelley. They both were torched on numerous routes over the day. I think there was one beautiful route that Tyler Boyd had where Duke Shelley got torched on a slant inside by, I think it was either T. Higgins or it might have been the first catch for Jamar Chase. And Tyler Boyd took advantage of that because he ran a little squirrel route, a quick step in, and then you spin right back to the outside. And because of how he had been torched a couple times on the slant, Duke Shelley did not expect it at all. Boyd cut right back to the outside, took a yard play for about 25. But I mean, it was great as a Bears fan to see that defense step up, see Khalil Mack get into it, Akeem Hicks. I thought the game was over well into the third, fourth quarter. But then you had Joe Burrow, like you just kind of mentioned. He came in and made it a lot closer than the game ever should have been, in my opinion. But again, that defense, Roquan Smith was with his pick 6. Jalen Johnson getting his first career interception. And it wasn't a bad ball. It was a really great play by him covering T. Higgins. And fun little fact, because I guess I'm kind of known for those as we continued to go along with this. Joe Burrow had not thrown an interception in his last 200 pass attempts, which was the longest active streak in the NFL. And then in 3 consecutive pass plays, he threw 3 interceptions. I mean, it's just, but again, he came back, he fought the adversity. We saw that Justin Fields might have maybe not been ready to be the guy, not necessarily ready to be the starter. He also had a couple drops from players. That deep touchdown that should have went to Allen Robinson, that could have increased his day for fantasy a lot more. I mean, overall, from a Bears fan perspective and fantasy, I think you've seen some pretty good things from that game, both sides.
One more thing. You covered anything I wanted to talk about. Joe Mixon, he had a very average performance. Actually, not even average, under par. Was not very acceptable in fantasy terms. How do you think about that? I've got him about every league right now. I was not happy.
I do too. After what we've seen last week of him getting about 20 to 25 touches and putting up 130 yards, and also how porous the Bears defense looked in week 1 against the Rams, I expected him to do a little bit more than 20 carries and only getting 70 yards, 68, whatever it was. That doesn't necessarily worry me, though, unless it's a situation like kind of what we saw where he's not necessarily utilized so much in the pass game that it's going more towards the receivers and the tight ends when they're down big. In an instance of where they had to come back when they were down 21-3 or whatever the score was at that moment. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's ideal for him to only put up what he did and have 70 yards rushing. I'm also not as scared about it because we see that he's going to get the volume.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not that scared about it. I'm going to plug him in every week until he continuously tells me not or shows me why I can't. So chill out on Joe Mixon, everybody. I think he's going to be fine. Tyler Boyd, like Paul said, fantasy relevant again. And then one more thing, Paul, your boy Justin Fields got in. What do you think about that?
Like I said, I spoke to it a little bit. We seen the rookie jitters from him. Ooh, there we go. Sorry, watching the game. Hopefully Aaron Jones comes back in. I doubt it, but yeah, no, I mean that interception that he threw was very ugly. But again, that's rookie coming into his first game. Not first game because obviously we've seen him play in LA week 1. That was his first time actually being the full starter, knowing that he's going to be the starter.
Yeah.
But
hey, that fumble
watching it
where he fumbled it and he got back on that, I was like, I love to see that.
Yeah.
I was like, he fumbled it. He did not. He was like, that's my ball. I'm getting that ball.
Yep. I mean, he even knocked it away from the defender trying to scoop and score on it.
Yep.
So it wasn't like it was just all sitting out there or whatever. Like he actually reached up, still on the ground, knocked it out, prevented the scoop and score, and recovered it. That's just ultimate effort right there. And that's coming from a rookie. Like if that shows you how competitive he is and how much he wants to win. And then another play, the one that stood out the most to me was that crucial 3rd down late in the game to seal it, where he broke away from Hendrickson coming around the corner, like to get away and rush for the 1st down. I mean, he's shown his fantasy relevance. It's going to take a little bit of time. But again, his numbers could have been so much better just one play alone. If Allen Robinson hadn't dropped that ball, which was a beautiful deep ball, 40-yard touchdown pass to the end zone, a lot of people thought it was tipped. It was whatever, but it wasn't. It was right through Allen Robinson's hands. And 9 times out of 10, we're going to see him make that catch. So that right there drastically could have changed Fields' output for fantasy. He's definitely not going to be a starter in fantasy or anything yet. I'm pretty sure Matt Nagy came out during his press conference today and said that Dalton's going to be the starter again. They're not worried. There's no ACL injury, MCL injury, nothing like that. They just took him out as precaution, and because of the score of what it was, they let Justin Fields kind of get that playing time and to get acclimated to the NFL. But I also feel like we talked about this for a little bit too long. We'll move on to the next game.
Feel you. Let's go Panthers versus Saints. We had Winston with a 50% completion rate. He had 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not impressive playing the Panthers, but maybe the Panthers D is just that good. He showed some struggle there. Alvin Kamara, what do we do with him? Sean Payton's not using him that much. I'm not very happy as a fantasy owner. If you guys have listened previously, me and Stone hype up Alvin Kamara any chance we get. We think he needs more opportunity in that offense. I believe after this week, Sean Payton will realize that. Sam Darnold looking decent. And DJ Moore is stealing the show over there for the Carolina wide receiving core.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, we've seen it 2 weeks in a row now. The Panthers offense hasn't overall been great. Last week, they looked really good. Sam Darnold looked really good. But I will say that Christian McCaffrey has put up 2 monster fantasy games.
Yes. He's the man.
And again, that's not me trying to take any shots at Stone or you or anything with
no, it's okay.
You guys question me thinking whether he's the best one.
He's being used. He's given all the opportunity. Kamara is not.
Exactly, 100%. And I think that's what the issue is. We're seeing it with not just Alvin Kamara, though. We're seeing it with a bunch of NFL running backs right now. They're getting spelled by their backups, so they're not being used as much as they should be. Coaches are just taking a completely different approach to what we're used to as fantasy owners. And I mean, we've seen it over the past couple of years. We've seen it go from strictly you have the 3-down workhorse running backs transitioning into a little bit of the committee running backs where one guy's getting a bulk of the carries who's still fantasy relevant. And you have the other guy like Tony Pollard or Latavius Murray where they come in, take a little bit of the touches. They might vulture a touchdown here and there. But that's just not the case anymore. It's a lot of it is running back by committee. Teams are drafting to have multiple running backs on the roster. And I mean, unless you're Derrick Henry, you really can't expect to be out on the field for 90% of your snaps as a running back anymore.
Yeah.
But getting back to the full game in and of itself, like you said, I think that the Saints are going to realize they're not utilizing Alvin Kamara the way they should be. They're not putting him in positions to succeed. They did a little bit in week 1 against the Packers, but again, that was a blowout game. They didn't necessarily want to play him late because you might injure your starters being up so high. Just situations like that. And I don't foresee him ever sitting out in your lineup. He's going to be a player you're going to continuously start just because of what he can do. And I would say that in the next week, we'll see if his usage is going to go up. If it doesn't, then I mean, that might be the time to start panicking on him.
Yeah, I'm going to leave him in until further notice. All right, next game, we've got the Rams versus the Colts. I don't care. Rams to the Super Bowl. Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp have made an amazing connection. I believe Cooper Kupp could lead the league this year in receiving yards. He might be able to be the number 1 fantasy wide receiver after these last 2 weeks. I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit. I'm super stoked about that. Darrell Henderson had a pretty decent game. Nothing too crazy. Let's see here. Colts struggled, but I think Carson Wentz put on a solid performance. He plays hard, and I think that's why he got himself banged up there at the end. His offensive line is not helping him much, and neither is his defense. That defense is not as good as we thought it was. Paul, you got anything else to add versus that Rams versus Colts game?
Not really. I didn't get to watch much of it, except for the fact that Stafford, he's looking like a very, very easy MVP contender at the moment. Cooper Kupp, I think he blew up to the tune of like 200 receiving yards or something like that. I think it was
like 160 and 2 touchdowns or something. It was crazy. It was amazing.
See, I thought it was like 210 or I thought it was something crazy. But yeah, I mean, those two, like you said, they've established a very good connection. I can't remember where I heard it, but they were talking about those two being the first in the building every day, eating breakfast together, going over film before any of the film sessions or any of the practice even starts.
I believe it.
And I would say the only downfall to that if there is one, is the fact that Bobby Trees is kind of being phased out a little bit.
I agree.
He's producing as much as we thought he would in this offense. Because, I mean, you've seen Stafford be able to get guys like Marvin Jones Jr. and Golden Tate involved, as well as his tight end, as well as Kenny Galladay. Like, he's had the ability to get multiple guys in his offense involved heavily.
Yeah.
But right now, it just seems like him and Cooper Kupp kind of have that connection, and they're not really letting it go.
Nope. All right. I like that a lot. Oh, one more thing. Jonathan Taylor puts on crappy-ish performance, but like it's kind of expected against the Rams defense. David Montgomery is probably just a better running back. Oops, I don't know if I should have said that or not, but just kidding.
I'm
I don't know. I
happy
like
you
David
did.
Montgomery a lot. But yeah, there's not much. Oh, I guess I'm forgetting things. Michael Pittman finally came out and had a good game, had over 100 receiving yards. Zach Pascal had another touchdown. Maybe he is fantasy relevant. Again, it's only week 2. I'm not going to spend too much more time on that. I just want to throw those stats out there a little bit.
You know who Pascal kind of reminds me of?
Ew.
Kendrick Bourne.
Okay.
He's a guy that's not super fantasy relevant. He's not going to go out there and get you really big games, but he's one of those guys that consistently gets the touchdowns on his roster, on his team, which is what happened with San Francisco last year. He had vultured some away from Debo when he was healthy. Same thing with Ayuk and Kittle. It seemed like in some of those inopportune moments of where your fantasy guy was looking to get a score, it was Zach Pascal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've went and picked up Zach Pascal in some leagues. It's going to be hard to start him in anything other than a flex. But I mean, if he goes out in week 3 and he gets another touchdown, yeah, I'm gonna be looking like this is a flex guy. This is a flex starting type of guy. All right, Jags versus Broncos. Trevor Lawrence struggles again. Did not have a good game. What do you think about that?
Well, I feel like that was another game that kind of threw me for a loop at a moment because Denver did not look good against them early on. Jacksonville got up a little bit on them, but then Denver kind of settled in. Teddy Bridgewater, he connected with Cortland Sutton. I think he went off for like 12 catches, 160 yards or
Cortland
something.
Sutton showed up, baby.
Yes,
160
he did.
yards. Shout out to Stone. Maybe you were right about Cortland Sutton all along. Just kidding. I like Cortland Sutton too. But yeah, going back to the Jags, James Robinson only had like 11 attempts again. They need to get that guy going. I know they were down the whole game, but as far as that goes, Teddy Bridgewater looked fine. Noah Fant will be a top tight end this year, I believe, if he keeps up on this pace. But yeah, on that Broncos offense, stick with Sutton, stick with Patrick. I believe he's going to be fine. But let's go ahead and move on to the next team. We've got the Pats versus the Jets. I'll start it off. Mac Jones looks decent. Nothing crazy. Zach Wilson had a disastrous performance. Did not look good. Bill Belichick feasts off those kind of rookies. I think the Pats defense just had a better day. I think Zach Wilson will get his stuff together. Anything to say about that, Paul? I think our producer wants us to speed things up a little bit.
The only thing I have to say is that I was completely wrong. With this being 2 rookie quarterbacks coming in into a rivalry game, divisional game, I expected it to be a little bit better, a little bit closer. But maybe the Jets are still the Jets that we know and love. The one of your fantasy starters against, and the ones you don't really choose to play any starters for the Jets on your team. Because, like you said, I think he had 4 interceptions within his first 10 pass attempts. It's ridiculous. And I think it's something that's going to take him time. So if you have him in any leagues, deep leagues where you're trying to start him, you picked him up as a rookie, I would definitely put him on the bench until further notice just to kind of and see how that offense plays out, see if he can get some of his receivers back and into the game. Until then, I think the Jets are still just going to be the same New York Jets that we know.
Oh, 100%. All right, let's move on. Eagles versus Niners. My biggest takeaway, Jalen Hurts played a great defense, and His passing work was limited. He was like 12 for 23. Most of his yards went to Quentin.
No, Quaz Watkins.
No, you said that backwards.
Quez Watkins.
Quez Watkins. That's where a majority of his pass work came in. Did not have a great day. Where he saw production was on the ground. He ran 10 rushes, 82 yards, and a touchdown. I hope you guys didn't waste your fantasy money on the Mitchell kid, Elijah Mitchell, that rookie out of San Francisco. Did not have a great day. I know people spent big on him. I was not one to. Let's go here. Raiders versus the Steelers. Are the Raiders for real this year? They came out hot. They made the Steelers look like crap. That good Steelers secondary, the whole defense is awesome. Carr throws for 382 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kenyon Drake is looking to be slightly relevant if Josh Jacobs is not playing. I think he still had like 12 fantasy points in PPR week 1. Stone, if you can hear me right now, what's that about Deontay Johnson? He had a pretty decent game. But anyways, Paul, do you have anything to throw in on that game?
Not really. Maybe just the fact that with the Raiders, Derek Carr right now, he's almost kind of putting on a similar performance to what Dak did at the beginning of last year. Through 2 games, I think he has a franchise record for most yards at like
over 800,
like 819 or something crazy like that for 2 games. Just to start the season. Again, like you said, that offense, it looks good. It looks solid. A lot of us thought it was going to kind of be hit or miss because what receivers do they have? I mean, the core of Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller kind of took a back seat this week. I don't think he produced more than 10 fantasy points. But that's not something to be scared of because the Steelers do play really good defense. Except I do believe they were missing Joe Hayden as well as Devin Bush. So that might have been a little bit giving them a little bit of a mismatch over the middle. But again, they played a really good defense. But maybe the Raiders are for real.
Yeah, great game to watch. Now we've got not such a great game to watch. The Bills versus the Dolphins. Wow. Josh Allen not even playing that great against the Dolphins. Even though they won 35-0, fantasy relevancy, he had like a little over 20 points. His rating as a quarterback right now is not great. He does not look like Josh Allen as of last year. He looks like 2 years ago Josh Allen. Not very accurate, not making great decisions. Tua went down, and now Adam Schefter tweeted today that Deshaun Watson is actually looking like a candidate to be traded to the Dolphins. Don't know how that'll turn out. Do you have anything to say about this game, Paul?
Not really, besides God, I chose to play Buffalo's defense. In one league, I had Buffalo's defense and I had Miami's defense. In the same league. At one point, I was starting Miami, and I'm like, you know what? I think Buffalo's going to be a little bit better. I like their secondary. And thank God I made that switch because that 35-0 shutout with a couple turnovers really helped me. Getting back to the Tua situation, I didn't watch the game. I wasn't really sure how Jacoby Brissett did in his absence.
He's a good backup.
But if they have to go with him, and again, if they have to go with him as the starter, maybe give him a game or so before they try to make a decision on Deshaun. Again, if that's the case, me and Stone were actually just talking about this in a couple episodes back. Adam Schefter dropped a tweet early in the morning before week 1 where we were basically asking for a combination of players and first-round picks of 6 for Deshaun Watson. And that's where Miami's interest kind of a back seat because they weren't necessarily willing to pay that price. So whether it be 4 players and 2 first-round picks or 4 first-round picks and 2 players, I have no idea what type of package they can put together. But now the fact that they don't have Tua to being hurt, and if they do try to pursue it, they might have to pay up a little bit more than asking price just to ensure actually getting him. So again, maybe we'll just let the situation play out for the next week or so and kind of see how that goes.
Yeah. Now we've got the Chargers versus Cowboys. Chargers, we've got Justin Herbert not looking great. Keenan Allen did fine. Austin Eckler did fine. Looking at the Cowboys side of the ball, Dak Prescott didn't have a great performance fantasy-wise. Greg Zuerlein won him that game. Zeke finally showed up. I hope you guys listen to us about Zeke. Zeke's fine. Nothing too crazy there other than the fact that I thought it was going to kind of be a shootout, and it was not. And for that, I am disappointed based off of how much fantasy I had going in that game. But yeah, I don't think there's too much to talk about in that. Let's talk about the Titans versus Seahawks. I think Derrick Henry finally showed up. 35 rushes, over 180 yards, something like that. Man came out, ran over people. He looks slow, though. I don't know if this is just me just watching him for the first time in a while, but he looks kind of slow.
I didn't watch any of that game. I didn't have it available to me, but I was kind of score watching it a little bit, stat watching, just because I wanted to be able to laugh in the people's faces who has Derrick Henry, because he's just one of them no-brainer guys that he's 6'4", 245 pounds, 250 pounds, whatever he is, and he just bulldozes and run people over. So it's fun watching him put up only like 5 fantasy points in week 1 and everybody freak out. And not to say that I was expecting it to happen again in week 2 against Seattle, who has a little bit of a shaky defense. It was just the fact that I think through almost like 2.5, 3 quarters, he barely was even close to 100 yards at that point. Then once he had that 60-yard touchdown where he stiff-armed one of the DBs straight into it, basically put that man in his own grave. Like, that's how vicious that stiff arm was.
That's how he
And
does.
he just took it to the house untouched at that, like after the stiff arm, untouched. And he just turned the entire game around from that point. I believe the Seahawks were still up at that. And he came back and he basically willed them to that win. And what I will say is, just because I want to take a little bit of a shot at you, our beloved Stone, Tyler Headache.
Oh, I know. I
Again,
was going to say that.
deep ball touchdowns.
Maybe I'll put my foot in
Those
my mouth on him.
moonshots from Russ, man.
Yeah, no,
I think it's every week there's a possibility that he can come out and do it.
And that's why I say you have to start him no matter what. Don't be surprised, though, if he comes out and doesn't do anything for a little bit. But yeah, I do got to put my foot in one. Anything else I'm thinking of say? Finally, Julio came out, had a great game. A.J. Brown did not look good. A.J. Brown was missing some catches. Just didn't look like normal A.J. Brown. But Julio finally showed up, played a heck of a ball game. Now we have the Bucks versus the Falcons. Tom Brady looked great like usual. It was not the Antonio Brown show. We had Chris Godwin looking good. We had Mike Evans looking good. Freaking Rob Gronkowski might be startable each and every week. In our ESPN league, our boy Cam has that nasty stack of Brady and Gronkowski.
Gronk.
Hate to play against it. Played against it week 1. He kicked my butt.
I want to speak to that real quick. I feel like I kind of allowed him to make that easy decision. He had Kyle Pitts, and we ended up making a trade Kyle Pitts for Gus Edwards. And then 2 days later, Gus Edwards goes down with his ACL injury, which gave me a starting tight end in Kyle Pitts, but it allowed him to also then stack Gronkowski, who again put up another 2 touchdowns this week, less yardage than he had last. But that also was kind of something that allowed him to get the win over me. And then at the beginning of this, when I told you I was down 40 points, it was to Cameron. Came back within 2.5 points, 37 on Monday night from Aaron Jones. I sat Julio Jones just because of the fact of what we all talked about. I wanted to kind of see it actually produce first. No, I don't. I ended up starting Darnell Mooney in his place, who got me 9. But with those extra 7 points of the 16 that Julio dropped, that could have been the win right there. So you're welcome, Cameron. I can guess myself a little bit also for giving you a tight end that you can start every week. And have to endure the 4 or 5 points from Kyle Pitts in week 1. But he actually started to show up a little bit. I don't know if you got to watch the game, but
yeah,
I think it was,
excited.
In the second or third quarter. He had an amazing grab from Matt Ryan. It was down in their I think they were down in their own part of the field. pretty deep. And this ball was like 3 feet behind him almost. And he just snags it one-handed and took it for about 20 plus yards. So I think we're going to continue to see him kind of amp up the his volume or his presence in the passing
Yeah.
game. I think Matt Ryan, he finally got his first touchdown of the year. Took him 6.5 quarters to do it, but then he threw a couple more. He got Cordell Patterson involved. I don't know if he's going to be a waiver wire kind of guy. We've seen flashes from him in the past where he's put up big games in a row, but then he disappears for 3 or 4. So before taking a huge chance on him, if you need a receiver, flex position, running back, whatever you want to consider him, I think he's going to continue to get touches in that offense, but maybe pump the brakes on him and kind of let him get acclimated more, see if he's going to continue to do it before putting in a waiver claim on a guy like Cordero Patterson.
To speak on that, I do like him. I think he fits well in that offense. He's going to be that hybrid running back, wide receiver. I'm going to make some claims on him this week. I'm not going to spend a bunch of money on him, but like you said, he could be there week 2, be gone till week 4. Who knows? Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the Cards versus the Vikings. Holy Kyler Murray, such a phenomenal athlete. Amazing to watch. I love him. I wish he would have got DeAndre Hopkins a little more involved throughout the entire game, not just like the first 2 quarters. Let's see here. Who else stood out in that game? Rondell Moore, like you said, Paul, really showed up. But that's mainly because I believe he was just running around wide open because of all the talent on that offense. On the Vikings, Kirk Cousins, Captain Kirk, throwing the ball. 2 great fantasy weeks in a row. Adam Thielen still showing out. Justin Jefferson had a little bit better of a game. And then this new kid, KJ Osborne, don't even know who he is, had like 6 or 7 targets, had like 17 fantasy points. Year. Yeah, he came out. I'll be looking at him, paying attention to him. I don't know if I'll make any claims on him. But yeah, heck of a game. One more thing we can talk about. The Ravens versus the Chiefs. Oh my gosh, Lamar Jackson. I was so hyped to watch him. He came out, did not look good in the first quarter. He turned the ball over a couple times. I think he even fumbled it. Yeah. The poise he showed, he got back in that game. He put the team in his back. He threw for over 200 yards, 237 to be exact, rushed for over 100 yards, scored multiple touchdowns. He's electric, and I drafted him in so many leagues. I'm so happy to see that performance. Now, given the Chiefs' defense is not the greatest in the world, I do believe he will show out like that all year long. I don't know if you guys remember, but I said Lamar Jackson has a chance to pass for over 200 yards a game each and every week. See it. Let's make it happen.
The only thing I have to say about that, we know how dangerous that offense can be when they get that run game going. Obviously, they had Taysom Williams involved. They had Devontae Freeman out there for a couple plays. That he had a big run. Latavius Murray. And I mean, Lamar Jackson, obviously himself. It's just a lot of designed runs, RPOs. He's going to do what he does every single week. But once you get the games where he has the ability to pass, where he can get it to Marquise Brown early, Mark Andrews, and I mean, we even seen it with a guy that I completely pooped on earlier, Sammy Watkins. I mean, he's starting to look like he can actually be a presence in that offense.
Except he dropped the ball.
And then getting to their defense, like a defense swarms. It's kind of the same Ravens of old. I wouldn't necessarily say they have the same type of roster of when they had Eric Weddle and Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, Haloti Ngata on the defensive line. Like all these players, like it's not necessarily the same, but they still have a lot of great guys. They got Marlon Humphrey on the outside. They got Deshaun Elliott at safety, who they love. Chuck Clark's still there. Like I'm not even sure how to pronounce the dude's first name. That tackle or that DN that they got. Yeah.
Owa.
Whatever. Owa. That's
he plays
name,
outside linebacker, but his position, he comes up on the line.
Yeah. He was wrecking that game playing yesterday for the Chiefs. But then to speak on the Chiefs defense a little bit, like you talked about, front 7 didn't look the greatest, but they also have Chris Jones, who is a all-pro defensive tackle. They've moved him to the outside. He's playing DN now. you could see the confusion of not necessarily playing there as like a full-time starter, of where he should have been the man that Lamar Jackson was reading, and he just made him look silly on so many different plays where either he would hand it off or he'd fake the handoff and he'd get to the outside with how quick he is, and you could just see Chris Jones sitting there like looking who to block. I mean, there was a couple times where their offensive line, it was a perfect stunt to where it wouldn't block him because nobody's supposed to, and that's the guy Lamar is reading. And again, it just confused him because nobody's blocking him. He didn't know what to do. He's not in the middle anymore. So I think we're kind of seeing that you have the ability to run on this defense. When it comes to passing, that's a completely other story. You still got Ty Matthew in the secondary. He's killing it. I think he had 2 picks against Lamar. Sorensen, I mean, he doesn't seem like a household name or anything, but you're starting to see him kind of become a Swiss Army knife for that defense, playing corner, playing safety, just all over. Yeah, I mean, outside of that, maybe the only other thing we could talk about is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I feel like Stone's pretty happy about it. Yeah, I didn't think he would. I feel like Stone's pretty happy about it. He doesn't seem like a guy that like Stone talked about, that he's not going to be super involved in the offense. We've seen the ball go all around Tyreek Hill a little bit, Travis Kelce, Byron Pringle,
Bring Kareem Hunt back.
Demarcus Robinson, everywhere. And it just, there wasn't a lot of touches, and the touches that he did get, he didn't do a whole bunch with it. So it doesn't have the same allure that he had as a rookie. I wouldn't necessarily bench him or anything, but maybe try to sell high on him if you can in any type of league. Anybody looking for running back help or depth, try to get anything out of him. Otherwise, it might be one of those situations where you have to sit him, and it's going to be a headache for trying to start or sit him depending on matchups all year long. So, I mean, like if you have the chance, I would probably try to trade him. Even if you take a little bit of a hit in return, I feel like if it's a positional need for your roster, it's going to just be a better decision, and it's going to be an easier decision than thinking about, should I sit him, should I start him, just because of his matchups or how well you think he's going to do.
All right. That's a great take. Guys, we're going to have to wrap it up. It has been a decent little podcast for you. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and say Fantasy Few out. Paul?
Sorry you guys missed our beloved Stone. I'm sure you guys are going to miss seeing his handsome face tonight. Like we talked about, he was on a little bit of a leave. Be back for the next episode. He'll be able to kind of keep us on track and give you all the details on our socials, whether to follow us, where to. But yeah, like Mason said, Fantasy Few out.